Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to PixelLit and a special Halloween episode. With me today is not Phil, but my friend James, and you may know him better from the internet as the king of thumbnails, HotCyder. James, how's it going today?
Ooh. Oh, sorry. I wanted to add some Halloween flair to the episode. Kevin, I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good because today we're going to be talking about a creepypasta,
Yes.
which is completely different than something we normally talk about. It's the Godzilla Monster of Monsters creepypasta from about 9 years ago, which is one of the most popular video game creepypastas that has ever been written.
Yeah, it was December 4th, 2011 was when this creepypasta first came by, actually, because I did decide to, do a little bit of digging and, see where these things come from. I mean, obviously,
you with the research.
Yeah, I decided to pull my trousers up and say, even though I'm a guest on the podcast, I got to pull my weight, I got to do a little bit of research. I'll tell you what, though, the best kind of creepypastas are the ones which you can't find a date for, because that adds the mystery of them.
Yeah.
But, this was... Oh, actually, yeah, so this was written between April 23rd and December 4th, 2011, which seems like a pretty long time between releases of creepypasta chapters. I mean, usually creepypastas don't have chapters, but...
Right.
As we're probably going to find out over the course of the episode, this is a very different creepypasta, and length is one of those defining factors, I think.
Yeah, it definitely has some chunk to it. It is longer than most creepypastas I've read. It is 8 chapters, and some of the chapters have multiple parts to them.
Yeah, it is longer than most books I've ever read. So that's, it definitely was a challenge for me. Didn't have as many pictures as a lot of the books that I read, though. So, swings and roundabouts, unfortunately. I will ask, though, Kevin, because I will say the first time I read this creepypasta was because you recommended it to me. I had no idea about it, though funnily enough, as I read through it, there were certain images and certain bits of text which I have seen on the internet, like, over the past few years, and, like, people's avatars and stuff like that, but I have never, like, come across this before. Like, the funny thing is kind of how it even came up was a strange thing, because we were in a Discord and we were talking about, somebody had mentioned that they were talking about Gravity Rush, and then that came on to talk about Superman and Superman in video games. And then somebody was like, oh, it'd be good if you could play like an evil Superman where you smash buildings. Actually, better than that, has anybody made any games about kaijus?
Right.
And into like War of the Monsters and stuff like that.
Rampage and things like that, yeah.
And then you mentioned, have you ever read the Godzilla creepypasta? And, like, those are two words when combined together is just such kind of like a strange thing that I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, yeah, you sent it to me. And despite it being, like, 1 a.m. my time, like, I'm laying in bed and I'm reading this thing on my phone, which I'm going to say to the people at home, if you've never read this creepypasta before and you want a way to put yourself in a mood, reading it in a dark room on a phone is actually very effective. And I'll kind of go into why that is as we kind of dig into the story a bit more. But I was reading, I was like, this is interesting. Like, I've never dug into something like this before. But I was going to ask, how did you come across it?
My memory is a little hazy, but it would have been like 9-ish years ago that I read it, and I think it was a post on Kotaku 9 years ago. There was I don't even know who posted it, which of the writers posted it, but they posted, oh, check out this like really long Godzilla creepypasta, and So I sat down and I read it, and I feel like I was at work or something like that. It was a really slow day. And I was like, okay, well, I can sit down and read this over lunch.
I got an hour to kill. That's good.
Yeah, I got an hour to kill. Why not? And it does take a good amount of time to read through this. And I sat there and I read it. And one of the things about me is there's a lot of horror that has zero effect on me, but for some reason, glitch horror. So that's things regarding like computer glitches, horror centered around technology, that gets right under my skin. And I remember the first time I read this 9 or so years ago, from that recommendation on Kotaku, it was all I could think about for days was the contents of this story. And so it wasn't until a couple days ago when we were figuring your guest appearance and all that out that I was like, yeah, let's dive back into it. It's been in the back of my head for a while.
A nice little bouncing off point, really. So when you kind of say glitch horror, because like I had been looking a little bit into sort of, creepypastas and where they come from, and it's funny that kind of like you can almost sort of split them down the middle in regards to most of them are kind of, well, most of them do kind of deal around either games that exist or games that don't exist, and whenever it comes to games that exist, there's always some kind of like underlying horror to it that does manifest itself as kind of like errors and glitches and stuff like that. But I suppose just like in other terms, like other kind of horror stuff, I mean, you kind of have like indie games, and I think kind of Undertale might be the best example of that, where it uses the nature of how the game works and like to kind of scare you.
Right. There are creepy moments at the end of Undertale. My dog wants to chime in on this. There are creepy moments at the end of Undertale.
Yes.
Spoilers for Undertale, for a whatever-year-old game, where the villain Flowey basically force quits the game. It takes the game takes your agency for your computer out of your hand, and I was like, I don't like that.
No, and it's like one of those moments which will always stick with me because it's such like it's basically the kind of Hideo Kojima thing of reading your memory card to spook you, but like taking it to the extra level of like, oh yeah, no, I'm not in, like, something else can control the programs on my computer. I don't know how I feel about this. It's, like, again, it is like really effective horror.
Yes. The Psycho Mantis interaction being the big thing from Metal Gear Solid 1. So yeah, that's kind of where this all came from. And then there's been, as you mentioned, there's been a bunch of indie games that have utilized this. One of the things that made me think about this a few years ago is when I spoke to Erdorf, who was the creator of the horror games Faith and Faith 2. I think Chapter 3 is going to be coming out this year, maybe. But yeah, he created Faith, and which is an interesting game because it is based with like these Commodore graphics, right? It's super simple. And one of the things that he said inspired him was the idea that this was a game that existed in the late 80s during the height of the Satanic Panic. And it was just it was like a game that was just lost to time, and it's just being found now. And that was the concept of the way he developed it, which is very similar. That parallels a little bit what we kind of get into with this Godzilla Monster of Monsters creepypasta.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the Faith games are great. And I'll even say like another thing kind of related to the Godzilla story as well, is that the thing that's so effective about them is that because it is like it's emulating the style of old kind of Atari and ColecoVision games where everything with those games had to be left to the imagination, and that's that's the playground of horror essentially.
It's the imagination. Exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into the story a little bit? So the background of this story, for those who don't know, is that it was originally posted on these forums. They were called the Bogleach forums. They don't exist anymore. They were posted by a user named Cosby Daff, who, using the Wayback Machine, I could see used a kind of loony picture of Luigi as his avatar.
It's a good looking avatar.
Yeah, it's a good looking avatar, and I think it's a nice off-brand Luigi that he's got going on there. Yeah. So yeah, he started posting these April 23rd, 2011, and James, as you mentioned, took a while to finish them. So they were on these forums that don't exist anymore, and then he also created a blog spot that still does exist. It's NES Godzilla Creepypasta.blogspot.com. So that's the location for it for the person who, I guess, more or less wrote the story. That's, I get, the most official location. The only thing is the images. There's no inline graphics. It looks like I think the links might have been broken at some point. Well, there are in some spots, but other spots they're missing. Anyway, so that's the background of the story. We read a version that was posted on the creepypasta.fandom.com. Yes, we went to a fandom.com website.
Unfortunately so. But I will say, at least the pictures did. At least they're all in line, and at least there's a. And again, another detail I will say: reading it on the phone, a lot of the kind of the extra layer of fandom stuff that's on top is all stripped out. Like, it is as much of a clean experience as you can get reading it. Reading it again on my computer, I don't know, a little bit of the horror is kind of diminished a little bit. Just from
when you see the images up next to an ad for Hero Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Ebony Online or something like that. Where, I'm scared, but I also want to try and pull the pins and help this guy win gold, and it's like, I don't know, it's pulling me in two different directions, unfortunately.
The story starts out with Chapter 1, Earth and Mars. Yes. So the Godzilla Monster and Monsters game, just a little bit more context for that. It was a game released by Toho, which is the studio that owns Godzilla, back in 1988. Is produced by a company called Compile. I don't think they are still around. Yep, defunct 2003. So, and it was just a side-scrolling beat 'em up, more or less, but with a few Godzilla monsters thrown into it. That's all it was.
And what I'll say about it is that kind of like, I think that's a pretty good place to start off of Creepypasta anyways, because people know who Godzilla is, but I think if you ask like the average person, oh, did you know he had an NES game? They'd probably go, I mean, I didn't off the top of my head, but yeah, that kind of makes sense. But like, they likely would know it was called Monster Monsters. So it kind of fits nicely into, it sort of splits the difference between like the usual creepypasta, which is, it's a familiar kids Nintendo game, but there's a creepy underlying element to it. So like, your Sonic EXEs or your Ben Drowns and stuff like that.
Right.
And then the other side of stuff, which is, I went to a car boot sale and I found this old grey NES cartridge, and all it had was a sticker on it that said kiss.exe. I don't know what this means, so I put it in my... And, and it's like a game that doesn't exist. This works because it's a game that does exist, but very few people actually know about it.
Yeah, it's a somewhat obscure, like, it's mid, as the kids say. The game is
it's pretty mid. Yeah, it's not. It's neither cringe nor based, is what I will say. Although one thing I think I will say is that the person who created the creepypasta did kind of have a nice place to start from, because in general, Godzilla's kind of creepy to look at anyway.
Yeah.
Because that was the intent, was that obviously in the original Godzilla he is just... He's a guy in a suit, but it is like this lumpy leather monster with crazy eyes. And it makes sense because the thing is, a creature born from nuclear war. Like, it's not meant to look natural at all. And then with the likes of Shin Godzilla and stuff, they kind of exaggerate the elements. And then you try and recreate something that already looks inhuman on the NES. And despite the fact that the sprites are pretty big and are pretty detailed, yeah, it just is very unsettling looking.
It is.
And one thing I noticed as well, because I decided, the game itself probably isn't that bad. And from watching a playthrough of it, the game itself actually seems pretty fun. I can understand why why the person in the story wanted to get the NES game back, because it's pretty good.
You had some nostalgia for it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But so because black is the background color in this, Godzilla's eye is also black, which means it's transparent. So the moment he goes over any other graphic, it just starts flickering different colors. It is so unsettling.
Yeah, that old NES trick of, there's just a transparency here now.
Yeah, no, exactly. Black is transparent. Yeah, anything black is transparent. So, I can see through Godzilla's eye. Oh, that's not very nice at all.
Yeah, exactly. Chapter 1 starts out with basically the protagonist. Zach, I believe, is the name.
Yeah.
The name's not revealed until the end, I don't believe. But the protagonist's name is Zach, and he's been looking for a copy of Monster of Monsters. And his friend Billy, which is just that's the default friend name, I feel, for a lot of these types of stories.
I was thinking about this because, so he said, when I was 10 years old, I got Monster of Monsters. Now, he says when he was 10 years old, he loved Godzilla. Now, assuming this guy's an American, which if he's got a friend called Billy and he's playing on an NES, that seems pretty likely. So if he played this game in 88 and this story came out in 2011, the guy's got to be 30 at the time, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Who, at the age of 30, calls themselves Billy?
Yeah, that's the thing is, Billy Zane?
Oh, yeah. Actually, no. So, like, Billy Joel. I think that...
Billy Joel.
That's a guy from the 50s. So, like, that makes sense. You go, Billy Zane or Billy Idol. But I don't know. A 30-year-old guy in 2011 calling himself Billy doesn't... Unless he's also still wearing short pants and a striped shirt. Doesn't seem correct.
An unbranded baseball cap,
Yeah, backwards. He's still got... He draws freckles onto his face because he no longer has them anymore. And he rides to your house on his bicycle and he goes, "Yo, dude, I got this NES game for you."
Yo, I got it at a garage sale. Want to check it and kick it with the... I lost my 90s references for some reason. Zima. Zima. You want to pop open a Zima and...
I'm gonna have myself a Surge Cola and I'm gonna enjoy Godzilla Monster Monsters.
The game is so basically the game seems normal in chapter 1 up until he fights Gazora, and basically the game eats Gazora and turns the screen into like a bunch of eyeballs or something like that.
Yeah. It's pretty freaky. It's like it starts to almost kind of like the texture of blood starts to come in. And I will say this is probably one of the best selling points of this Creepypasta is that there are a lot of screenshots to go along with it to kind of like sell a lot of the ideas that are going on. And what I will say is, again, reading this on the phone was actually pretty effective because of the screen size.
Yep. Yeah.
The moment you look at these images a little bit larger, some of the illusion is broken a little bit. But
yeah, just a tiny bit. You can tell, like, oh yeah, that's just like, Photoshop, like drew the bounding box over and scaled it up type of.
Yeah, a little bit. And like with this kind of red paint effect, it's almost like he got the spray can tool in MS Paint and went, okay, dab there. Oh yeah, looking good, looking
sharp.
This is looking spooky. I like it a lot.
So, basically the game's just, in chapter 1, the game seems normal-ish. It just keeps getting a little bit weirder and weirder. Gazora gets consumed by the game and turned into eyeballs, and Maguera is twice its normal size.
Yeah,
and
one of my favorite lines in this, which is, Maguera was twice the size he should have been. which startled me. Which I feel like I say that about any time I see my cousin's children, just like they're twice the size they should be, and I find that very startling.
These children are getting way too big, and that is upsetting.
I remember when they were the size of maybe 2 bags of sugar on top of each other. I don't like them getting any larger than that. But if they get no larger, if they stay under 5 foot, I will be fine with that. But any bigger than that, and that's kind of how this guy feels about Mogura. Which again, this is quite early on, so seems very weird, but nothing totally out of the ordinary yet.
Yeah. Titanosaurus is a little bit taller. The thing where it finally breaks, though, is he finishes the Earth level, and instead of going to Jupiter as if as the game is supposed to, it is going to a level called Pathos.
Yes.
Ooh.
All the levels of I decided to do a little bit of looking into that, and the level names and the creepypasta make a little bit more sense when you kind of know what the story is about. Because in the regular monsters, it's about Earth's getting attacked by Planet X. So Godzilla and Mothra have to go to all the different planets. So you go to Jupiter and Mars and all that sort of stuff. Oh no, here you go to Paphos instead, which
you are going to sadness.
Yes.
So it's like things get wildly different now because one of the bosses, how do you say that? A Biolante, which I believe,
something like that.
Which he declares that would have been impossible because Biolante didn't come out until wasn't introduced into the canon until 89, and this game was 88.
Yeah. I will say, one thing that I do find funny about this, which I think if you've ever read a creepypasta before, you kind of know what this is, but if this is like kind of your first one, the thing that you kind of have to take the rub with it is that like these are kind of your modern day horror stories, but they're kind of delivered in the way of like a game facts effort.
Exactly.
So in this one, like the guy's kind of writing it like, oh, here's my recollection of it. Like, hey, if you ever get this haunted NES cart, here's some tips and tricks for how to beat the game. And my favorite detail is that he goes to Paphos and he goes, well, I know this is a new level because although the background looks like the board of Jupiter, it's got different colors. And he says at the beginning of the story, he hasn't played this game in 20 plus years. Now, how does he remember the color of the board in Jupiter, of all things? I mean, God,
you have to kind of ignore certain things. The game, a horror when you're getting your horror through a game facts walkthrough.
Yes. I mean, granted, I'll give it that. Like, I mean, a lot of horror is built on kind of the unexpected. I mean, the best example of that is, say, I mean, it's not really a horror film, but From Dusk Till Dawn, where you go in expecting it to be a Tarantino gangster movie, and then literally at the halfway mark, it turns into a
vampires. Yeah.
Surprise. Oh, yeah. Surprise. Vampire movie. Well, this is kind of like, it's tricking, it's kind of lulling you into a false sense of security because it is this, it's kind of, I don't think I think the writer knows exactly what he's doing. Like, he's delivering it in the style of a dry game fact, which means that when you get to kind of these weird elements, like, not only does it show an authority on the protagonist, meaning that they are still within their right mind, which means that these scares have a bit more weight to them, but it also catches you a little bit off guard, which the pictures certainly do help with that as well.
Yeah, once you start getting into the weirder pictures, like basically the sky is like, oh, things are the same, but not quite. The colors are swapped, and then different enemies start popping up, and then there's new bosses. Like the bosses are being slowly replaced.
Yes.
So Magera, or however you say that, is replaced by a flying machine, and Gazora is turned into this crazy. And this was I think this was one of the enemies that creeped me out the most, was this blue with the backwards knees,
Oh yeah,
the light blue with the brain-ish kind of head and single eye. I didn't like that one so much.
No, and I'd love to know, and again, this was me wanting to dig in a little bit more, kind of like what the inspirations were, because like a lot of the designs kind of have a Giga quality to them, especially later on. There's, a lot of alien influence. But then
right
with stuff like this with the backwards knees, it almost kind of feels a bit like really low budget, like B-movie, horror movie stuff like Extra and stuff like that, where yeah, no, it does work. And then again, if you've never played a Godzilla game or have ever seen a Godzilla film, you go, oh, maybe this is just, maybe these are just the guys he fights against. I don't see what the issue is here.
Yeah, if you don't know a ton about Godzilla, and I don't know much, like my knowledge of the Godzilla canon is not vast or deep or what have you. Yeah, I could definitely be like, oh, it's a guy. That looks like there could have been a dude in a suit, I guess, or an animatronic of that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have to say, just for the people at home and also for Gavin, I'm unfortunately the only Godzilla I know, which I think is canon, is the Jamiroquai Deeper Underground video, where the guy's dancing in the movie theater while Godzilla's attacking it. I'm pretty sure that's canon.
That was peak Godzilla movie right there.
That was Godzilla at his most Godzilla. Absolutely.
Yeah. The platonic ideal of Godzilla was a Jamiroquai music video.
Exactly.
So the writer, the protagonist, is talking about how more and more things are getting weird. And faces off against Biolante. And then there's this, the guy who did this did a really good job of creating pixel art for a boss that wasn't even in the game. I give him that, and like, this is really cool. I mean, it's still a little too good for the NES in terms of resolution, I think, but it's pretty well done.
As an antagonist, if it's who I think you're going to mention, as an antagonist designed for a creepypasta, it is very much punching above. It is very much punching above its weight. It is a very cool design.
Yeah. So basically, he beats Biolante and is introduced to a level with there's just a red mask on the tile, and the prompt is simply run. Which something about the prompt to run is always a little unsettling, especially when there's no other context around it. I don't know what it is in horror where that's just where we see that and it's just do it. And something about it gets under my skin. So once this happens where it's just run, like, okay.
I mean, even in general, I think a single white word on a complete sparse black screen is incredibly unsettling. To the point that I've always had this stupid idea for a website, which is purely just like a picture of a skull and then a countdown underneath it. Now, the countdown isn't counting down to anything in particular. It's just a countdown on a black screen paired with a skull. And my thought was always, how long would it take for somebody to take this website down because they just find it incredibly unsettling?
Yeah, exactly. Like, do they think, is this website a threat or something like that? Or are we going to have to...
threat? Is it like is it when I'm going to die? Is it when the skull's coming out? Like a film about skulls or something? I don't understand. What do you mean?
And then when the countdown finishes, it just says, the text says, the countdown has finished. Thank you.
even scarier than that, it finishes and it says, now, buy the non-fungible token for this skull.
We have invest now, this Ethereum-backed skull. It's an NFT. Give me your wallets, nerds. So basically, there's this red mask on the map, and the only thing left to do on the level is to put Godzilla over top of it and select the stage. And we're talking about how it just prompts you to run, and when you start running, there's this thing, this skull-faced red lizard thing with spider legs that begins chasing you.
Yeah, basically, to describe to people at home who haven't seen what this guy looks like, it's basically like, what if Mr. Magoo's face had no eyes or teeth and was on a scorpion's body, essentially, and it was all red.
Yes.
Which, what if funnily enough, that's the name that the protagonist get very smartly. The protagonist looks at this character, clicks his fingers, and goes, "Red. That's what I'm going to call you, bud. You're red."
So, it's an instant death if red touches your creature, and he escapes it. Thankfully, our hero escapes red, and then he moves on to the next chapter, the next level of the game, which has now been called Trance. Yes. And he said the theme. It map
sounds
music
like the theme tune from Videodrome.
Videodrome. I was like,
which for the people at home, if you've never heard it, it basically sounds like a dot matrix printer mixed with screams, essentially. Which, how they managed to do that on the NES? I mean, that's quite impressive. I'll say that. But
I will say that for working that out into that music chip. God bless you.
No, and I mean the protagonist does often say, as anachronistic elements comes up, there was no way this game was made in 1988. Which, actually, I guess Videodrome would be I think that did come out before 1988. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
There we go.
Is one of the I just want to check. Yeah, 1983. It was one of the 3 movies that were. It was Videodrome and
American Werewolf in London.
In London, and The Thing were all in production at the same time, around the same time.
It was like the return of the Universal Monster, because they were all
the Universal Monster. And it's weird because Videodrome is like, I don't think that would fit into the Universal Monster canon at all.
I can't imagine in the 1930s, like, even though videos wouldn't have existed, but that's not the point. I couldn't see Bela Lugosi playing James Wood's sleazy character from Videodrome with Debbie Harry's face appearing on a like a projector screen or something like that. If we're moving the technology back, yeah.
Oh, Bella
pulling an old-fashioned musket out of his chest. God.
Oh, that would have been good though. If I do just want to imagine Bella doing.
That. And do you know what would have even been even better? Abbott and Costello meet the Videodrome.
Abbott and Costello. Oh God. Yes, that would be quite good. I'd like that.
That would be a classic film.
That would be a classic film.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the more anachronistic stuff starts popping up in the game, such as Orga, which was not created until the year 2000. So things are getting a little weird, and then the quiz levels start appearing.
I will say, before we get to the quiz levels, there is a line in this which I do think is quite funny when he is talking about the anachronistic elements, which is, those guys at Toho may be smart, but I'm sure they couldn't see that far into the future. If they could, they never would have given Roland Emmerich the rights to make a Godzilla movie. Like, this guy's scared out of his mind that this game is like getting under his skin. But he's still taking the time to like crack jokes.
He's still going to burn Roland Emmerich for his Godzilla movie.
I mean, it would have been egg on his face if he got further in and a tiny pixelated Matthew Broderick turned up and said, "That's a lot of fish." God.
Oh God. That movie happened.
It sure did. The best thing that came out of that movie, as I know, is the is Deeper Underground by Jamiroquai. So.
Is correct. The what we have determined is the Platonic ideal of Godzilla.
Yeah.
So
and there was one more line before the quiz as well, which was, so all the way through he's like, this is pretty bad, but I mean this is still within the realm of possibility. But he thinks about Billy, and here's the horror line. Here's the this is the big horror stinger, which is Billy didn't know how to make a ROM hack.
Ooh, yeah.
It's just like such a funny line in regards.
It is. It's like Billy doesn't know how to make a ROM hack. Like, well, the name Billy, as we've determined, is absurd.
Yeah, Billy is already a funny name for a 30-year-old man to have. And, Billy might be messing with him, but he can't mess with me that much. I know Billy inside and out, and I know that he could not make a ROM. Actually, no, he goes on and he says, but if he could make a ROM hack, it probably wouldn't be this complex. It would be full of genitals and stuff like that. And it's like, well, there's a lot of Giga stuff coming up, bud. Yeah. So, bite your tongue a little bit.
Bite your tongue a little bit. There are some possible peens coming up.
Yeah.
And there's he also asks, is it even possible to put a hacked ROM into a cartridge? The answer is yes. That is
yes, it is.
It is possible.
If you have a copy of the SNES game Winter Games, you can put Star Fox 2 on that because it has a Super Effects 2 chip in it. So
no. Well, there you go.
That's my Halloween trick or treat recommendation to the people at home. So
slap Star Fox 2 onto Winter Games and then play it with an original SNES, and you'll be doing that.
And you'll have a great time.
You'll have a great time, and that's the HotCyder guarantee.
Absolutely.
So, James, do you like dogs?
Dogs are pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. That's what the quiz level asks our friend Zach, is whether he likes dogs. And these quiz levels are... It's a really weird turn, but I think it also shows that the author has relatively good control of what he wants to do with this game, with this story, because it's such an absurd concept that these quiz levels pop up. But at the same time, it's not that out of the realm of possibilities for a Nintendo game from the 80s to have something really weird like this just slapped into
No, exactly. To have this kind of mini game element to bulk out the rest of the experience.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right. And that being said, I can't imagine Family Feud or whatever would ask some of the questions that come up in this. Although it'd be good if it did.
Yeah, it would be. I think Family Feud would be a lot more interesting if it would.
If Steve Harvey came out and said, "All right, we asked 100 people. Do you like hurting people?"
Survey says,
"Ding ding ding ding." Yes.
Yes, 100 out of 100 answered yes.
100 out of 100 said, "Yes, I like to share the pain."
Then Pinhead comes out.
Of course, the protagonist does say to all of this, wow, maybe this is why the game was so weird. One of the designers was clearly drugged out of his mind. As we all know, terrifying elements like that does come at the expense of psychedelic drugs. So,
yes. Yeah, it was a pretty common thing, and I feel like it's less common in storytelling now to just blame twisted things on either drugs or psychosis. Because let me tell you, neurotypical, straight-laced neurotypical people could have some of the weirdest stuff going on in their minds.
I think the classic Simpsons joke about it kills all notion of that, where they get Otto in to voice Pooch, and he's like, "What were you guys smoking when you came up with this?" And the animator sticks his head out and says, "We were eating rotisserie chicken. Now read the line."
Oh, that's amazing. It's like that is the a perfect rebuttal to that kind of, oh, they must have been on something.
It was been on something. I like the faces that the quiz has as well. They give me a vibe of like really old like BB code forums. Like kind of that like little hand like very. If I hadn't found the forum that this was on, I would have almost thought this came from like the Something Awful forum or something, because they had that kind of like how those emojis used to look.
Yeah, back when those emoticons were just like they were for each forum that existed, they had their own set that they created.
Oh, 100%. But they would also have like a couple of commonalities of like You know, like Edison, you know, watching his rivals to make his light bulbs better. Like, oh, that forum has a ninja emoji. We're going to have a ninja emoji as well. And funnily enough, this quiz also has a ninja emoji in it, and I'm not quite sure why.
I'm not sure either. And what's really funny is that the quiz section, you don't necessarily need to read or thoroughly understand everything he writes. This is probably, I would say, the Tom Clancyest he gets in the story because it's just so much detail about these emoticons. It feels like Tom Clancy talking about like a jet or something like that.
Oh no, exactly. Where he's describing it down to like, you know, how many cubic centimeters of fuel you can put in the engine and stuff like that. All the way along, like even in the previous chapter, he was like, the song should be the same, but there's a significant distance. Every 14 seconds, there is a loud noise, and then the song slows down by this much percent. And it's like, if I was scared out of my mind, even if I was completely, if I was completely functional, I would not notice those details, especially of a game that I haven't played in nearly 20 years.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, hey, he's writing a game fac about.
He's writing a game fac, so a lot of detail has to be put into this.
Absolutely.
Or else the nerds will be angry.
But there is something cool that comes out of the quiz, though.
Yeah,
which is he gets a new monster to play with.
Yeah, he gets a brand new monster. What was it? The
Angurius, I believe.
Angurius, yes.
Which he famously, much like the beginning of Goodfellas, the famous line at the beginning of Goodfellas, he says, "Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to play as Angurius." But then it isn't followed by Rags to Riches, which would have been very funny.
So Angurius is basically the Sonic of the Godzilla monsters. He can roll up into a ball and do like a spin attack or something like that. But basically, he gets Angurius on the dementia level after doing the quiz, and there's these. The game begins to drift further and further and further, and he gets into this level where just called Unforgiving Cold, where he he has to walk through a level of just these frozen, screaming faces for 7 minutes. I don't understand. Like 7 minutes is such a long time in a video game.
Yeah, I don't know. Like at that point, I'd just be kind of like, I mean, I probably would have tapped out a little while earlier because like it's asking me all these very kind of personal questions, and I'm like, I don't know, a lot of this doesn't really apply to me. I'm not feeling this, but just walking through a 7 minute level of nothing but frozen enemies is a big ask.
It's a huge ask for me. I do not have the time to let that happen to my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the level continues. He's fighting against new bosses and replacement bosses. This is so I understand the story is basically trying to cover the entire game, but also at the same time, the middle of the story is where it feels a little bit slow because there's so much game to cover. There's like such a huge gap to fill until we really get to some of the big turns of the game.
Yeah. And I would say that that's almost quite... I definitely think that's intentional, because one element that I found the first time I read it, and then a little bit when I reread it, but not so much the next time, was you would get these enormous blocks of text, which is very kind of matter of the fact describing stuff. So you end up kind of speed reading a lot of it.
Right.
And as I was doing that, bam! Like, you would, like, come face to face with, like, just this really weird image or, like, really evocative sentence. It's like, oh, you know, it's almost like, you know, accidentally, like, scratching a car with your own as you're, like, kind of absentmindedly driving. It's just, like, genuinely shocking. And
right.
I think a lot of this story, like, again, as I said, this kind of, like, almost game facts style delivery is lulling you into this kind of comfort zone that these scares, you know, they're effective scares because of that. Because you are like such in kind of like a mellow place that they can hit a lot harder as a result.
Right. Yeah, because some of the biggest scares they really start happening in chapter 5 when the quiz takes away everybody but Mothra, and now he has to...
Another great line, which is, "Face had just fucked me over." That's what he calls the quiz. He just calls it face.
Face giveth and face taketh away.
Face taketh away. Face fuck me. It's like he cares. Again, it's the Goodfellas thing. Face fucked me over. God damn it. And yeah, he's just stuck with Mothra then.
Yeah, he's flying around with Mothra. He's now in some, and this is where it's almost like, oh, the game is almost becoming an immersive sim, because Mothra is flying through these levels where there's very animals.
Detailed deer monster.
Yeah, there's these deer monsters that they don't attack you. They're just kind of there, and they have their own simulation loop. And then they're being attacked by these upright raptors. Yeah. And so it's like, that's kind of interesting. And then there's these TV screen levels.
Oh, yeah, the TV screens. Yeah, the boy with the beaver head. The boy with lollipop.
Yeah, when you... He clicks on it, it basically just plays this gif of a boy with a beaver head with a green and blue striped shirt and licking a lollipop. And it just sits there.
It does, yeah. And the funny thing is, so throughout this creepypasta, which again is also, like, that's another extra layer to how well these screenshots are done, is that some of them are animated, including this one of him licking the lollipop. Now, they only rarely use it for anything horrible, and like all the way through I was kind of like, if I was to redo this or whatever, I'd occasionally have it so like the ones that you think are static, occasionally like a monster looks in your direction or whatever and then turns back, and like it happens so quickly that you have no idea whether it did it or not. And
right,
like that's what these TV shows kind of have the quality of it. But I also think as well, like, the writer is very good at peppering in a lot of kind of... I think it must just be kind of like an idiosyncratic humor that he had, because I was digging in and I was like, have these got any kind of... When you have the story in focus, do these have any additional meaning to them? And I don't think they do. I think they are just meant to be these very kind of like... They're evocative images, but they're not really meant to evocate anything. It's just there to keep you on your toes, essentially.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so the TV images are basically the new element that get introduced now in chapter 5 as just something, another nuance to the world. And he continues fighting through these levels. The monsters are getting weirder and weirder. And he returns to that forest level where he saw the deer, and now the deer are it's snowy and the deer are all frozen to death.
Yeah, he went to I was wondering with this part whether this was meant to be allegorical or of anything, because earlier on Mothra is picking up like sand timers and stuff like that, and then he goes to like a nuclear waste plant, and it's like, oh, is this meant to be like a story in miniature of industrialization? Oh, the world is dying. Oh no, it's nuclear winter, stuff like that. And oh, you're seeing it from the eyes of Mothra, which I'll say, by the way, the protagonist of the story, not a fan of Mothra.
Not a fan of
Mothra. He says
Mothra.
very straight at the beginning, not a fan. The fact that I'm having to be forced to play as Mothra, not good. I think it's a shame. Mothra's quite a good-looking sprite. It's got the most colors of anybody else in the game, and you can fly around like Kirby. What's the problem?
What's the problem? And Mothra is of the Godzilla monsters. From the limited research I've done, Mothra is the more heroic of them.
Yeah,
Mothra is kind of like the protector of Earth. So, like, why not?
No, exactly. Well, I mean, maybe I don't know. The protagonist, he's got his I don't know. He's got his priorities all over the place.
All over the map.
Yeah, once we get to the snow zone, all the deer are dead, and he mentioned sloths as well. They become like the new delicacy for the raptors.
Yeah, the raptors are ripping apart these sloths with some and here on like when you're reading this on a phone screen, it's harder to tell when you're looking at it on a monitor. You're like, oh yeah, the raptor graphics are way too high DPI.
The deer in particular look like, and it kind of reminds me of it almost reminds me a little bit of AM2R, where it's a bit of a clash of styles because they use for the creator of it uses for the most part the NES sprites like Godzilla and Mothra and stuff like that, never changes. But then the deer are they're way the rendering on them is way too high detail, but to the point that they're not as like rounded or like as they don't have as much volume as like any of the monsters do. So it's almost like kind of very high rendered stick figures. Which I think kind of does lend them a bit of an additional creepy quality because of that.
They're uncanny, yeah.
And I will say, respects to the writer of this creepypasta, because when the raptors are eating the sloths, there is detailed blood coming out of them. He does not say the classic creepypasta line of, the blood looked very realistic. More realistic than an NES could handle.
Yeah. Yeah, he does point out, like, this is like he calls out the fact that the graphics look weird or better or different than they should on an NES.
But he's also, I mean, he's pretty hooked in at this point, because earlier on he also says that the music was a sort of short looping of an ambient synthesizer song. Listening to it made me feel like I had sniffed some toxic fumes myself, and it was messing with my head the whole time. I even felt like I was choking while playing this level. Now, I've played a lot of bad games over the years, and at no point have I ever felt like, I've never felt like the music in a video game has had that kind of effect on me. But that being said, there is such a thing as like synesthesia and stuff like that, where know certain sounds and smells can trigger other stuff,
trigger other sensations.
Exactly. Perhaps this protagonist may have undiagnosed synesthesia. That might have been the whole solution to this entire story.
That's the entire story is synesthesia mixed with grief, I guess, which we will be finding out soon.
Oh, we're going to find out about that very quickly, actually. Because, as you said, Entropy is the chapter where this is the turn, essentially. This is where this is when the card is turned over and you're basically told what this is about, essentially.
So after beating the Moon Beast, respects to which, you know what, I'm going to assume this is where Miyazaki got the idea for the Bloodborne boss.
when I saw it, I was like, 1,000% this is a... And the guy even said, like, this is based on a dream I had, which, shout out to the developers for getting somebody's dream into a video game, I think. But, yeah, the egg, the moon cracks like an egg, a little person falls out of it into the water, and then, it turns into a big old moon beast that looks straight out of something from Bloodborne.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty neat. That it does feel almost like a cleric beast or what have you from Bloodborne, but this predates Bloodborne by 4 years or so.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's pretty interesting. So after dealing with the moon beast, though, we get a little backstory on the character of Zach. And his friend Melissa, who was his girlfriend when he was in middle school, and she would go into episodes. Now, the episodes that he describes, in the back of my mind, they sound like something that I've heard of. Is it a grand mal seizure or?
Yeah, I've heard the term. I have never really dealt with it myself, but yeah, I know what you're kind of talking about.
So it's like it's a type of seizure where the person, you don't realize that the person is having a seizure. They're just kind of sitting there. But when they snap out of it, they're not really going to remember a whole lot of what just happened. There was actually a girl in my elementary school who was, I remember going into third grade. She had been in third grade the previous year, and she was repeating third grade because they discovered that she was having these seizures during the school day.
Oh, God.
And at her desk and not learning. She couldn't learn anything. It's very sad. But I mean, they figured it out, and they were able to start treatment for her. But it was, it's very terrifying. So he has this girlfriend, Melissa, who would go into these episodes, and during an episode one night, she runs out into the road and gets hit by a car and dies.
Yeah, they are laying in a field looking up at the stars. She has one of those, and she is hit by a truck to the point that I'm not going to repeat it because he does describe in detail how it looks, but there is it's not a fun detail at all, but it is a detail of that, which is how her neck looked, which is recreated on the moon beast.
Yeah.
Which, going back and rereading, I was like, that is very, for a creepypasta, that is incredibly good attention to detail.
Very subtle, too. He doesn't call it out that it's like the moon beast's neck. But when you scroll back up and look at the moon beast, you're like, oh.
And yet he will go into details saying that this isn't the song that I would remember from this.
Yeah.
In fact, usually it's in 3/4 time, but this is actually done on 5/6, which is very weird. But, I didn't think of it much at the time.
Yeah, it's he'll go into detail on the text, but the subtext is tastefully handled.
Yeah, which I think is maybe the best way to handle it, in all honesty.
So he kills the moon beast, and then this is where I think I started getting chills the very first time I read it. Goes to a black screen, and after he tells the backstory about his old girlfriend, Melissa, the screen just reads in red text, Melissa, and then changes to the words, kill yourself, and then the word kill fills the screen. And this chapter ends with the evil Mr. Magoo face.
With Magoo made out of the word kill.
Yeah. It's an unsettling image to look at.
Uh-huh. And when you're me at 1 a.m. in your bed and you're like, oh, let's get to the good stuff. Let's scroll through. Yeah, when you get to that works. That's an effective image.
That's a good image right there. That really...
oh yeah,
hits the spot. Some would say.
Uh-huh.
And then we continue on. Like chapter 5 continues basically.
Entropy Chapter 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say as well, so now that we've mentioned kind of what the card flip is, I did have a look. All of the chapter names, for the most part, are named after different neuroscience terms.
Yeah.
So Pathos is obviously is kind of. Oh gosh, I did write this down. I'll be as quick as
sadness.
So pathos is basically emotional appeal. It's like the complaints of the soul, as Stoicism calls it.
Okay.
Then trance is altered states of consciousness, is disassociation. Entropy is your brain's connectivity and capacity for information. Now, the only one I couldn't find an answer for was the next chapter. And the chapter after that, I think both of them kind of drop this naming convention because, well, it kind of makes a bit more sense when we get to them, really, because of the contents of the story, really.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and dementia was another one of them.
And dementia, of course.
Yeah, which is, well, we know what dementia is. So he calms his nerves and continues on. Fucked up as it was, this was the experience of a lifetime. And then he clicks on another TV tile, and we get this adorable little frogman just kind of like opening and closing his mouth. I just want to eat him up. I think this is cute as hell.
Yeah, he's adorable as hell. But I just love the fact that he says, fucked up as it was, this was the experience of a like he just put sunglasses on after saying that.
It's like the end of an 80s movie. It'd be like he just, he just beat the ski instructor in a downhill race or something like that.
He's scared out of his mind, but he's like, yeah, but I pay for and like he puts the power glove on and he turns on like Huey Lewis in the news and he's like, all right, I'm locked in. Let's see what else you got.
I'm gonna play you've made me mad, and as he slides the power glove on.
Oh, now you've made me mad. Yeah, he puts the power glove on and he plays with the
it's like hip to be square. Yeah, hip to be square starts playing in the background.
God.
Oh God. So basically he still has to use Mothra, and a new type of like maze chase level gets introduced where he's flying around these interesting levels with Mothra, which is like part of this is like if they were making this game now, they would make it so that you would have to use certain characters on certain levels. It wouldn't be like you could use whatever on whatever level, because I feel like designers now would be like, oh no, this is a Mothra level where you.
This is a Mothra, and again, it looks a bit like an auto scroller or something like that. This level, because it is just kind of like a little flying maze. But yeah, no, 100% it would be like, I know that we're trying to tease this guy over his dead girlfriend, but he needs to use Godzilla on this level. It's all about combat. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So he continues through. There's some weird, and I feel like there might be. He sees these faces, these
big heads.
Big heads that he says have the face that Melissa was making when she died.
Yeah, a lot of big. Yeah, she made a big 8-bit face.
She made a big 8-bit face when she died.
Yeah,
it was a really sad moment.
And it's going through the Mothra maze, and more bosses are being thrown in as well, and like it is kind of at this point you do kind of get a good grasp of how things are going. That being said, though, this does have like one of the scariest. It has got one of the most unsettling TV gifs in this, to the point that I'm actually kind of surprised it's still up on the fandom page, because it's quite gnarly.
It is gnarly. It's basically this executioner with a mask on, taking a giant sledgehammer and just crunching somebody's head open.
Yeah, like that gave me like really big like Splatterhouse vibes.
I was about to say Splatterhouse. It does have a lot of it. That's what I thought of when I first saw it. It's not clear. It's not the mask from Splatterhouse, but it it just gave me that, oh yeah, this
Yeah,
would be something from Splatterhouse.
Like Splatterhouse has a boss which has like a hangman, well, yeah, like the axeman's bag over his head, but I think he uses chainsaws. Also reminded me a little bit of Chiller, which was this really old NES light gun game. I think it was an arcade game, which is genuinely a game that I can't look at a lot of footage of because I do find it so unsettling in regards to like, it's these really grotesque ass, but because they're done in such a low bit style, like again, your mind kind of like fills in the details. And because there's such a mystery behind who developed it, it's like, oh, like, was this made by a crazy person? Was this made by an actual murder? And again, and I think those are influences which all riff on what this story is doing, which is, you know, the guy, the creator, he's paying homage. He knows his, he knows his, his betters.
He knows his horror references, definitely.
100%.
Speaking of Splatterhouse, it feels like we should get there should be something new in the vein of Splatterhouse out there, right? Doesn't that seem?
Yeah, nobody's making good gnarly horror. I think the kind of, because most horror stuff that we get nowadays are like, either they're kind of like Alien Isolation or they're like, RPG Maker style games where, they start off one thing and then the horror element slowly creeps in. But yeah, nobody makes gnarly, nasty, bloody games anymore.
Yeah, Splatterhouse, just gross.
There's definitely a market for it. The 360 Splatterhouse was like, that's the last game I think that did it. And even then, that was just kind of, what if we did God of War, but it's a brawler? And it's, I don't know. I don't know. I want something a bit more. Because, like, again, Splatterhouse kind of had that weird quality to it of, like, it's Namco and they're kind of riffing on all these horror things, but there's that slight unsettling element to it because it's, it's a TurboGrafx 16 game and the music is a little bit wonky and the graphics you kind of have to fill in the gaps yourself. But hey, if you're a fan of PixelLit and you listen to this episode and you can develop a game like that, me and Kevin would very much appreciate it.
We would love a new Splatterhouse style game. Doesn't have to be Splatterhouse. Don't break your back trying to get the license for Splatterhouse. Just give me something gross.
Call it Blood Mansion. There we go.
Blood Mansion. That sounds perfect. Actually, I would play the hell out of Blood Mansion.
Blood Mansion coming soon to Steam and Switch.
Yes, the endless list of independent games on Switch that you have to wade through.
Hey, it'll be near the top though. It starts with a B.
It starts with a B. That's true. So basically, there's more mansion-y, the mazy type stuff, and there's this interesting level where Mothra has to fly through the maze, but the light keeps going on and off, and when the lights are off, these raptor monsters start chasing you. So that's kind of a cool, it's a cool gameplay element.
Oh yeah, this guy was thinking like like the Mario Galaxy designers, like, how can we add a new twist? What's a new twist you could introduce at this level in this game about torturing you regarding your past girlfriends? Yeah,
exactly. And this motif kind of continues after beating Mechagodzilla.
Mechagodzilla, who turns into a very interesting sprite of essentially a little dog with a big man's face.
Yeah, it's basically what is it? Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I was trying to put my finger on it because my mind went to Mars Attacks with God, is it the woman from Sex and the God, is it the actress from Sex and the City whose head is put on the chihuahua?
Oh, right. I can't remember who it is, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like it's on the poster for Mars Attacks because it's such like an iconic scene, despite the fact that it doesn't have until like the last 5 minutes of the film. But yeah, like very Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, like a dog with a man's face on.
Yeah,
that was what I was trying to remember.
Yeah. So what we're referencing is from the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Definitely worth watching. It's a creepy body snatcher movie, of which there have been plenty of body snatcher type movies, but this one is this one has Donald Sutherland in it. It's based on, I think it's more or less because I just listened to to an episode, an Oops All Monsters episode on it. The 1978 movie is more based on the original book.
Yeah, rather than being a remake of the 50s.
Then as opposed to as a remake of the 50s movie. So yeah, it's worth checking out. But yeah, so the continues through these mazes, beats Mechagodzilla, and you said, as you mentioned, the whole human-faced dog body Mechagodzilla form. And then finally there's another run level.
Big Red, he's back, baby.
Big Red's back, and he's all out of Big Red chewing gum.
Yeah, he's all out of Big Red chew. He's here to have a flying form and chew bubble gum, and he's all out of bubble gum.
He's all out of bubble gum, and he's ready to chew on Mothra instead. So it's another one of those maze levels that he kind of talks about going through, and he says he gets lucky finding the exit. And that's the end of
say all the way through. And again, I don't want to keep dogging on it because I mean it's the same point, but it is written from the style of like, oh, if I don't do this, I don't know what'll happen, or you need to do this, you need to make these level of jumps. But because he's such a pro gamer, nothing like he's always doing fine.
Yeah,
which it does diffuse the tension of the horror just a bit.
He is an amazing pro gamer.
I think that's the reason why Brett hates him, is because he is such a pro gamer. He knows all the strats. He's got an action replay cart plugged into his. Maybe that's where the monsters are coming from. He put in the wrong action replay code. And, he wanted infinite. He wanted infinite air, but he ended up getting him. He got infinite scares instead.
Oh, there we go.
That's why they had me on the podcast.
If you,
like that.
Like, you get the evil switch.
Yeah. There's your problem. You got to switch to evil. There we go.
That's this. It's that Krusty the Clown doll, but as a video game is this creepypasta.
If you got a ghost in the NES cartridge, just use some isopropyl alcohol. Clean it right out.
Cleans it right out. You get a little Q-tip and a little isopropyl alcohol. You're fine.
Yeah, nice. Get rid of all the ghosts.
So he gets in the next level in Extus. He gets another new monster. Who is
does.
He sure does, and he's the best monster ever. His name is Solomon.
Yes.
He can do everything. He's stronger than all the other monsters. He's like the Mary Sue of monsters, basically.
Not based on any previous Toho creature, I will say as well. Neither is Red, but throughout the story, it's cool actually. Like, I had a look at Monster of Monsters, and essentially it's kind of like the Smash Brothers of its day, because it isn't just Godzilla stuff, it's also other Toho
it's all the Toho monsters, yeah.
Yeah, but then this one also adds a couple of new ones too, which, it adds Red, and it also adds Solomon, who, as you said, Solomon he's just the best. He's the best guy for every situation.
He's the best guy for every situation. It's amazing because, he beats his first level as Solomon, and up pops this image of Solomon just kind of standing there looking at the camera, and the caption... grinning, and the caption below says "Still the best, 1973," and he writes in the story.
I have no idea what "Still the best, 1973" means. Neither the date nor the phrase has any meaning or significance to me that I can think of, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it.
And it appears every time you beat a level with Solomon.
Yeah. If look out for this, like, if you Google for it. But keep in mind, some people have edited the image so he's giving finger guns, which, when I originally saw the image, I thought he was doing that as well. So I thought that was the right one, but he doesn't usually. But yeah, because essentially he's like a kind of a flying guy who's got like an almost like exposed skull for a face. So he's just always grinning. He's just having a great time.
Still the best. 1973. Still the best. I feel like somebody has to have had that on a t-shirt at some point. Like,
oh, 100%.
Gotten a scan, like gotten blown up this JPEG and put it on a t-shirt.
100%.
So there's some weird pyramid stuff that happens, pyramid and Native American stuff, which is a little weird to throw in.
It does have my favorite unintentionally funny image, though, in the entire creepypasta, which is, again, it's Solomon, but it's Solomon in a lift, which just has the word lift on it. It's just him standing still and just looking goofy as hell as he goes down in an elevator.
Lift.
Lifts. Oh, God.
And then they continue fighting bosses. There's Kumanga, Gorosaurus. One of my favorite TV screens is
the faucet head.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't think there was ever much reason behind the TV screens. If I was to guess, I'd say it's some random, uncontrolled manifestation of the cartridge's abilities. Or maybe it all makes perfect sense of the, quote, game. Like, I just like the idea of this cartridge being this kind of, like, evil living entity, but it just likes putting in these memes just to, like, fuck with him.
Like, ooh, look at this. There's a man with a faucet for a head. Oh, aren't I evil?
There's a beaver licking a lollipop. What do you think of that?
Ooh, it's basically the cartridge, the sentience of the cartridge kind of switches between like just these terrible, horrific images like Red over to basically David S. Pumpkins.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It has two modes, which is gaslight or shit post, and it kind of like, and it just vibrates violently between those two modes throughout the story, constantly keeping you on your toes. The David S. Pumpkins thing is funny because they do just kind of come out of nowhere to the point of even the protagonist of the story is like, why is this here? What does this mean?
And it's like, I'm David Pumpkins. Any questions? Yes, several. Oh gosh. So this wraps up with another run level, but instead of normal, he's basically walking through a graveyard and he sees a blue floating cyber angel type thing.
Yeah, she looks like the woman from Metropolis.
Yeah.
Big old robot lady.
Big old robot lady. And then Red comes in and just eats her up. Just gobbles her right up.
Literally like a bomber eating a glizzy. Just swallows it whole.
Right.
It's not a good look.
Not a good look. Just sucks it down. And so our protagonist says to the screen, "You're gonna pay." And then Red decides to make eye contact with us, the reader, and scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a lot of screenshots for somebody who is terrified.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, the story does stretch disbelief at some points where it's like, I was so scared I couldn't move, except I could still do Control Windows S and take a screen grab.
Right.
And also, I couldn't get my head around this. I assumed he was playing a Haunted NES cartridge.
Right. He's supposed to be.
How's he playing it on his PC?
Yeah. That's the thing, is like, there's the way they got screenshots for an OG NES was it's a really intricate setup in order to do that.
Yeah, like he'd have to have like a like a capture card in his PC or something.
Yeah, you'd have to run it through a capture card into the PC that uses like old S-video or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Which seems like a pretty big jump to make when, not to advocate for piracy or anything, but if he owned that cartridge from his friend Billy, he could just download the ROM.
Yeah. Yeah. Yar. Yar.
Yar. That isn't a HotCyder top tip, by the way. I'm not recommending to anybody to download ROMs for games they don't know, especially haunted games.
Do not download ROMs for haunted games. You don't know where they've been.
Exactly. You don't know what they'll do to your PC. So, or your Mac, or Linux-based systems.
Or actually, whatever you have.
If you got a Linux-based system, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, you should be fine. I don't think
a ghost doesn't understand. It wouldn't be able to pass that kernel.
Ghosts are they're a little bit more familiar with what they experienced in real life, and nobody actually ever uses Linux systems. They just say they do.
No, exactly. They say, yeah, this hydroelectric dam runs on Linux, and it's like, okay, but that's not a computer I'm ever going to use. I use an iPad. I'm going to just haunt this iPad.
I'm going to haunt this iPad over here until it gets recycled.
Okay.
It starts out with like this very melodramatic line.
Oh God, yeah.
And here we are at the final world. I don't like to discuss this part, and it still bothers me very much, but it's something I have to do so that I can put this behind me. People deserve to know.
If you've ever played this game before, you would be very surprised at this part, so I need to be upfront with you about what happens next. God.
So, yeah, it's a very short level. Basically, there's not that much to go through, and then there's what is it? Destroya and Ghidorah as the bosses at the end.
That does start with a creepy quiz, though.
Yeah, the quiz. The face is dead. The face is now melting and dying, and it just says
it's recommending him the film Get Out. Which
it's recommending Get Out.
Which is weird, because that film came out in 2017. How would this game know about a film from that far ahead?
That's wild. So I would have said yes to Get Out, though. I mean,
yeah. It says Get Out, and then it starts distorting, and it won't let him... and at this point, he's like, what the hell is going on? The game's behavior was scaring me, and I hadn't even started the levels yet, and it's like, I thought the penny now dropped for you. Did nothing in the previous levels. Like, there was nothing there that had you like considering this might be a bit much. It is the big space saying "Get Out." That's a bit much.
That was the thing that really tipped it in favor of being scared.
That was the straw that broke Solomon's back. That being said, still the best 1973.
So there's a new monster now on the board. He tries to select it, and the game says no, and moves the monster off the board. And then there's the last TV screen, which is basically just the...
Oh, yeah. It's a burnt body in front of a fire or something like that.
Yeah,
it's not nice.
It's like Terminator 2 Judgment Day, like type of setup. You almost feel like the T-1000s are going to step on the skull or something like that.
It is. It's like the nightmare that Sarah Connor's having.
Yeah, pretty much. It's exactly that. So there's he gets into another temple level, and this time he has to fight basically that angel, which is now red, as like a mini boss.
Very Contra-esque. This final level. Like, this is when I said earlier that there's a lot of Giga influence in here. Like, all the enemies in this look like the Giga enemies from Contra.
Pretty much.
And, like, even the temple itself seems to be made out of, like, ground beef.
Yeah.
Which is not good luck.
Not a good look. And one of the levels, all the platforms are made out of the word kill.
Yes.
Which is fascinating choice. Another level is like, yeah, you were talking about the Giger stuff. It's like the monsters like melt into each other and become one gigantic monster.
Yeah, like a big old legion creature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then at one level, it flashes up the word mother and then cuts to a pregnant alien with no eye sockets. Well, just nothing but eye sockets, essentially, hung by, he says intestines, but I don't know, the NES graphic style is a bit more like a big zipper, which, not good look. And then a crow with a clown's face pops out of his belly and attacks by shooting green green needles, essentially.
Yeah, the imagery of the thing, the mother hanging, is like, oh, that's disturbing, and it's immediately offset by the clown-faced crow.
And then also immediately, like, these are upsetting images, except the protagonist says, it's also worth noting that all of them were considerably larger than Godzilla, and although the majority were not very intelligent, each of them took around 30 plus hits to kill. Due to this, it was a better idea to run away from the fight, but it was never clear exactly what direction to run to. Like, the game facts voice comes back for
game
that.
Yeah. Did you know?
Did you know? I have taken a breakdown of these demonic creatures, and I would say that if you have this upgrade, it will take around 20 to 30 shots to kill, but other than that... God...
Then there's like the monsters start getting weirdly like photorealistic.
Yeah. This when I mentioned Undertale earlier, that's what that reminded me of. Was the final boss from that, which is I had a look on the wiki because I was going to call it this, and then it turns out this is the quote. This is the sort of official name that's been given, which is Photoshop Flowey. As in, it looks like a creature which is made out of like kit-bashed photos to create a monster, essentially, which was created by a guy. That design was created by a guy from Something Awful called Everdrade, who I wanted to make sure I got his name right, and I had to look him up. And the way that I found him was in such a bizarre way, which was he had done a piece of art for something which was called Son of Strauker, Son of God, which was somebody had made a fantasy story by remixing pieces of Barack Obama's autobiography. If you're listening to this at home, do find it out, because it is such a it's actually quite cool. But they just took words of my father and just like rearranged the stuff that Obama was saying into making this like fantasy story about the creation of the world, essentially.
That's nuts.
Yeah. But anyways, the guy who created Photoshop Flowey made art for that. And that's what those creatures reminded me was, very, very Photoshop-esque, essentially.
Yeah. Definitely has that Photoshop Flowey vibe. Though also predates Flowey by several years. So just continue on. There's a lot of weird monsters that pop up. There's like there's this gigantic hell beast that he has to fight against that acts as a mini boss. And then eventually comes up against King Ghidorah, which is the 3-headed like dragon. Like if you've seen pictures of the Godzilla monsters, this is one of the more common ones that you'll see. And then King Ghidorah becomes Mecha King Ghidorah, and Destroya, which is an interesting little enemy. I didn't know anything about Destroya, but it looks like it starts out as it started out as like an embryo, basically, and each hit it grows up.
No, it's very cool.
Yeah, the evolution. It's weird. It's a thing. It's like it grows. That's part of its That's part of its mystique is the growing. But yeah, so those are like the bosses that they have to deal with, and then all that's left is the one last mask to deal with. Red. Yep. Red is back.
Magoo.
Mr. Magoo.
Back, and he's ready to lay down the law.
He's ready to lay down the law. He starts taunting the protagonist, saying, "You pathetic worm, it's too late now. Only one will survive." And he starts feeling the pain. Every time one of the monsters gets hit, he feels it. The writer feels the pain. Which,
that's yeah. I mean, that's a classic.
That's a choice.
That is a classic creepypasta trope at this point. But if
you die in the game, you die in real life.
Die for real. I felt like Godzilla. My body was being burned. I just imagined, because he was like, "Oh, there's points in the story where it's like I should have screamed, but I didn't. But I worried what my roommates would think." And it's like, his roommate just like walked past this room looking in, and it's just like, "What are you up to? why is your skin looking like that? Just turn off the game, bud. Just unplug it. Come on, what are you up to?" But no, at this point, this is the power of the game. It's got him completely under his grasp to the point that he is feeling Godzilla's pain.
He is feeling Godzilla's pain, and then also all the other monsters, because it takes all of the monsters to fight through. And when he gets through fighting to Solomon, Red and Solomon have an exchange where
we get a bit of backstory.
A little backstory.
Solomon was a
traitor,
an agent of sorts. Yeah, he betrayed Red. Him and Red were once buddies, but not anymore. He has turned to the good side. I mean, this
probably
is
in I would say 1973 is when Solomon turned to the good side.
Is this story set in 1973? It's speculative fiction about the NES. God. Yeah.
So Solomon beats Red's final form, quote unquote, because then Red has another form where he has like 15 life bars.
Oh yeah, he has so many life bars they go off the screen.
Yeah.
That's how hearty this guy is.
So, and this is where the story, it gets a little less, like, I would say a lot of the stuff preceding this is scarier than this moment, because it becomes like an action movie. It escalates way too much into cinema, good versus evil.
Yeah, like I don't think it had to be a cynical ending, but I do kind of wish it had maybe, like, this feels like the end of like an Avengers movie or something.
Yeah, the theme is kicked on. Basically, Red starts saying, "You can't win, Zachary. I've known you for a long time. I'll tell you a secret. I killed Melissa."
Oh my god! How did an NES cartridge do that?
How did that happen?
Who is this demon? Where did he come from? How does he know? How is he so tightly intertwined with Zach and Melissa? It's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. And then it's revealed. So basically, Red kills all the monsters, and then the angel thing pops up saying, "Zach, we don't have much time. You already know me. I am Melissa. It's true. Even after death, he tortures me. If you can't stop him, he'll do the same to you. I can't fight Red, but there's one who can. I'll release him from Red's grasp. Don't give up. I love you." And the fifth monster, Acacius, which is just like
the Acacius of Constantinople. It's an old biblical name. Which again, the name of this chapter, of both chapters, is Zenith, which at this point, like, has nothing to do with neuroscience. It is, I mean, Zenith is it's another word for climax, essentially. Like, It's pretty fitting for this, but
yeah,
it also sounds very mythological and stuff like that as well. But Associus, he joins Super Smash Brothers. He's in the game now.
He got the envelope.
He did. He got the envelope, and oh boy, he's pretty OP.
He's pretty OP. He basically just wipes Red. It's a fight to the end. But you know who's gonna win? Red is destroyed by Associus, and you have saved. It's basically they're all together in the graveyard, and they're including Face.
Yeah,
little quiz Face is there too.
Oh, I didn't notice. Is that true? Is he still like the angry face, or is he like a smiley face?
He's smiley. He's happy. He was saved. And the game ends with Melissa telling Zachary, "You have saved us. We are forever grateful. We'll be together again someday." And then the title screen for Godzilla Monster of Monsters pops up.
Although it doesn't quite end there, does it? Because there's an
epilogue. Yeah.
Which I didn't really have much to say about the epilogue, other than the fact that I was hoping at this point that he might explain a little bit of, this is an incredibly personal story to me that goes into grief and stuff like that. So why did I bother uploading it? And
yeah.
Basically, kind of. So Billy comes back as well, and he does chastise Billy a little bit, and he's like, "So do you know this NES cartridge was haunted?"
Why did you give me a haunted game?
Apparently, which I think is a bit shit on Zachary's part, because Billy apparently he's genuinely upset by it. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't actually mean to give you a haunted cartridge. I had no idea."
Yeah.
He had got it from a friend of a friend that does trades with him. So I don't know, kind of leaves stuff. You know, that friend of a friend could be like Samuel Jackson at the end of the Avengers. Like, I'm putting together a team of people who can destroy spooky NES Nintendo carts.
The cart busters.
Yeah, it's going to be Zachary. It's going to be the Ben Drowned guy.
Yep.
It'll be the Sonic EXE CD guy. Yeah, all of them are going to join forces to destroy
the first person. And the first person who discovered like Pallet Town was the
Pallet Town guy. He's going to be on it as well. And they're all gonna join forces to destroy Polybius. They're gonna find the only Polybius cabinet in Portland, Oregon.
So the story basically ends with this sage advice: if you feel as if the game is literally messing with your head, shut the damn thing off.
The damn thing off. That being said, though, he does lay a little spooky thing in there, which is, damn it, once that thought came into my head, I knew then I wouldn't be able to destroy it. So he was going to take it to the beach and throw it in the water, knowing that wouldn't do it. So ultimately, this is what he decides to do with cartridge. He sells the game on eBay. So that cartridge could still be out there, ready to haunt you with this man's very specific form of grief. And if you've read this story before, well, I mean, you're going to know all the tricks and tips now. You're going to know how many hit points all the monsters have.
You know which ones take about 20 to 30 hits. You know,
you know as well when it says, do you like Mothra? You got to say yes so you can keep all the monsters as
exactly.
well. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it would be funny if somebody else got it and like somebody else turned it on and like there's like the Melissa ghost thing. Be like, oh hey, you're not Zach.
Hello, I don't know who you are, but hey,
can I play Monster of Monsters now?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you Arceus. So good luck. They just do like a really old-fashioned camcorder LP for it as well, but it's like like they're doing like an AVGN thing where they just continue to turn to camera and it's just like, what the hell is this bullshit? This game sucks.
Oh God. Well, that's the end of the story. So what'd you think of it overall?
I genuinely do like it. Like
Yeah.
I was like kind of poking holes at it from kind of a point of being like following a lot of creepypasta tropes, but of them it does really like it is kind of a cut above the rest of them. And the main elements I will say is the fact that a lot of it isn't left to the imagination. Actually, that's the thing. It uses a lot of screenshots to support stuff all the way through, but it totally leans into that kind of element of kind of creepy NES horror games where there's not really enough detail in any of the graphics, so your mind kind of fills in the blanks. Even with a lot of the high-res stuff, but even when you kind of get to that point, it's just like it flips the other way of like they're high quality enough that they are just genuinely unsettling to look at, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
Again, I keep ragging on like the game fact stuff, but that stuff does genuinely work.
It does work.
It's kind of it's tricking you into thinking it's going to be one thing, and then slap bam, the horror elements come in, and it throws you as much for a loop as it does. Like, it's better at throwing the audience for a loop than it does the, quote, protagonist.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it is just really well done.
Yeah.
And although it is lengthy, I would say it is that length does justify itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does. It works on a lot of levels. It works. I would say it doesn't work on some levels that probably could have been resolved in, I get the feeling that this story was not written all at once. Like, as you said, it was like the first one was published in April and the last part of it was published in like December or something like that.
Yeah, so it was kind of, like the guy probably had an idea in his head of, that's the one thing I would love to know, and I'd love to kind of dig in a bit more of how it was written in regards to, did they start with Monster and Monsters and then go from there, or did they start with this idea of, the Columbo thing of, this is the solution to the mystery, this is the explanation for why it's being haunted.
Right.
And then I work backwards from there and we figure out how to get to that, because it does just, everything just kind of, it just slots together so tightly, which is really nice.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, as you said, it's that kind of serialized nature of it which does take a lot of steam out of it, because the quality changes a lot between chapters, and even more than that, I was looking and like this was written for a contest as well that they were running on that forum. So I wonder as well whether it was a thing of, well, I know that I have to deliver it by these certain dates, and maybe he was working within a restriction as well, so he knew that maybe this can't be like the most but then I guess that's the thing in it, is that like, you aim for perfect and you may never finish things, but you aim for good enough and at least you have something. So, and I would say even as a good enough, this is still like, especially in the genre that it's in of this kind of crowdsourced horror, it is definitely punching above its weight.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Well, James, thank you so much for being on PixelLit. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find you and what you're working on and all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is James. You may know me better as HotCyder. You can find me on Twitter, HotCyder. I make, as was mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I make a lot of thumbnails for a lot of YouTube people, but I also make my own thumbnails, my own YouTube videos, which I've been keeping a pretty steady schedule of that at the moment.
Yeah, you have.
Hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, I haven't abandoned the channel or anything. To the point that even one of the last videos I put out, which was covering Deathloop, had a certain familiar podcasting voice in it.
It sure did.
Which you may also have heard of in a well, it's not really a rival podcast, it's more of a complimentary podcast that I do called Quest and Show, which is a tabletop cast that Kev has been on, and we're hoping to have him back in next year as well. But if you're interested in anything that I'm working on, Twitter is the best place to find me, and hopefully I got some exciting stuff coming soon, maybe even something for Halloween, but I'm not promising anything yet.
Ooh. Awesome. Well, That'll do it for today's episode. You all know the drill by now. Please follow us on Twitter at PixelLit Pod. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Share with your friends, family, even your enemies. I mean, I wouldn't mind if you shared us with your enemies. It wouldn't they can enjoy quality podcasts as well. And that'll do it. My name is Kevin, and you have been listening to the PixelLit Podcast.